with a few introductions. Hello, everyone. I'm Jessie Gollenbecke. I'm Mediacurrent's marketing manager. In my role at Mediacurrent, I create and execute marketing strategies, working alongside many departments within our company.
My name is Damien McKenna. I'm community lead at Mediacurrent. In addition to working on client projects, I lead our company's internal and external contribution efforts and help make sure all of our staff know how to work with Drupal.org and its wide variety of tools.
Hi, Matt Wetmore. I am the Director of Web Ops here at Acquia. I'm primarily responsible for Acquia.com and a lot of our other marketing properties. And we have a number of developers that are working on our site and making it the best it can be.
And I'm Ryan Pacini. I'm really excited to be with everyone today. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for Acquia's Drupal Cloud. Some of you may know that Acquia has, we have built out a suite of digital experience capabilities that fall into two clouds, our Drupal Cloud and our Marketing Cloud. And I'm responsible for product marketing for the Drupal Cloud.
So yeah, we can kick it off a little bit about Mediacurrent and Acquia. So Mediacurrent, we are the open source expansion partner. What this means is that we help organizations that want to elevate and advance their open source digital experience. We do this by aligning with our partners' business goals and needs and solve them with open source technologies. As a full service digital agency, we have been focused on Drupal since 2007 and work with clients anywhere from mid-sized businesses to name recognizable high-profile enterprise brands. We have a team of developers, digital strategists, research, designers, and innovators who thrive on solving the most complex challenges. And we've been a partner of Acquia since 2008.
Great, thanks, Jessie. And Acquia has a unique relationship to Drupal in that the founder of Drupal serves as the CTO of Acquia. And we've created a set of technologies that complement and enhance Drupal. The foundation for most brands and organizations' digital experience is content. But over the course of the last 10 years, it has evolved. Organizations want to do more and more with digital. So they want to use data to inform that content and make it relevant for their customers. They want to launch a variety of campaigns and have the right management and operations around those campaigns. They want to improve their DevOps as it relates to Drupal so they can deliver more efficiently. And so Acquia has built out this end-to-end platform for digital experience management with Drupal as the foundation. We are the only Gartner leader in their digital experience management report of a technology provider that is using Drupal as the foundation. We're a very well-established company. We have over 4,000 customers, and you can see a good portion of the Fortune 1000, 1,100 employees worldwide with offices all over the globe. So the combination of Mediacurrent's domain expertise and agency capabilities with Acquia's technology to kind of enhance Drupal is usually a winning recipe for our customers and in creating great experiences with Drupal. And so most of you on the line are familiar with Drupal as a framework, but for those of you who are relatively new to Drupal or have only kind of scratched the surface, I just want to spend a minute or two talking about what Drupal is and why you should care. And so for those of you who don't know, Drupal has been around for about 20 years. It's a very established technology, but it has grown, pardon me, exponentially over the course of the last 5 to 10 years as organizations recognize that the world is changing and they need a framework and a solution that's flexible, that's fast, and interoperates with a variety of other systems and processes that help deliver a great digital experience. So Drupal is software that's used for a variety of these digital experiences, whether it's a corporate website for a large organization. It's a portfolio of sites for someone like Nestle who has both brand sites and campaign sites in their corporate site. And it's even used for things like intranets for companies who are trying to effectively create a great employee experience. So one of the things that the customers and the organizations love who use Drupal is the ability to deploy it across a variety of experiences and the flexibility and speed in which it can be delivered. If you want to flip to the next slide, please, Jesse. You can see that Drupal on this slide is very well adopted and established in the marketplace and has a robust community that's driving that innovation. So you can see 1 out of 30 sites in the world run on Drupal in comparison to some of the other kind of enterprise content management systems. It's far above and beyond anyone else's reach within that enterprise category. I'm not sure why some of the bullets aren't loading here. Okay, there you go. But you have 35,000 active contributors to the Drupal community, and you have 45,000 modules. And what this means is there's tons of innovation that's going on within this community. And there's pretty much for any kind of experience that you want to build, there's already pre-built components that can be assembled to help expedite whatever kind of digital experience your organization is focused on. And so with Drupal being delivering digital content and more of the buyer's journey moving online, it's become a more and more relevant framework. And obviously with COVID, it has accelerated the pace that organizations need to adopt digital as their primary customer engagement channel. And if you flip to the next slide, please, Jesse. At the heart of any brand's success is loyalty and awareness. And historically, this has been an equation, at least over the last 5 years, that was partially in person, delivered through in-person relationships, and partially delivered through digital experiences. But now with the pace of change with COVID, this brand loyalty and awareness is primarily taking place online because retail stores aren't open, B2B companies can't go out and see their customers because of limitations for COVID. And so, next slide, please, Jesse. You can see that content is the lifeblood of that buyer's journey on digital channels. Obviously, data informs that content. There's operational processes that need to take place. You need to have the right architecture, but what the customer sees is content. What the customer experiences is content with an organization. And so Drupal is really kind of at the intersection of what companies need given what's going on in the world right now. And if you flip to the next slide, please, Jesse. What most organizations have seen when trying to figure out how to get the right content out so they can build brand awareness and loyalty is that they have each of these, they have a variety of choices. And these choices are beneficial in some capacity, but they have limitations in others. So for example, a traditional CMS tool is really great with IT leaders who are focused on compliance and security and workflows, and even maybe traditional, like a corporate marketing team who's developed some competency. However, they've really fallen down with the folks who are trying to create the content on a day-to-day basis. They're not easy to use and they're not designed for marketers. And so that's why you've seen the emergence of consumer site building tools. And this category might be, this category could include things like Wix and Squarespace and WordPress. But the limitations of the consumer site building tools are that they don't meet the needs of IT. They struggle with security. They struggle with compliance and governance. And so then it leaves the last option, which is emerging, maybe a decoupled CMS or custom. Often what the challenge that comes with these solutions is that they are complex to manage. And there's a lot of maintenance that goes into them, and it's a lot of effort to deliver on the kind of experience that you want to. And so that's why, in addition to COVID expediting digital as the primary customer engagement channel, Drupal, and you flip to the next slide, has risen to the top in this environment because it provides the best of all three that organizations need. So Drupal has always been enterprise ready, very secure platform. There's a ton of governance that goes into it. With the community and organizations like Acquia and Mediacurrent have really kind of helped with the historical ease of use challenge that might have gone into Drupal, and it's really made tremendous strides. So it's simple to use for marketers, and they love it because they can still get content live fast. And then the flexibility that Drupal provides has always been something that's been a value. And so that is still there. That still remains. That's part of the community and all the extensions and modules that are built. And so Drupal is in a really unique place right now because it gives organizations the best of all three in one platform. And with that, the launch of Drupal 9 has even strengthened Drupal's position in the market. And I'm going to pass it over to, I think, Damien or Matt here to talk about why Drupal 9 has kind of taken Drupal to the next level and why we're really excited about it.
Was that me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Drupal 9 is incredibly important for what?
Yeah, there you go.
So Drupal 9 is incredibly important because it's really the easiest upgrade that we've had in a very long time. If anyone's been around for Drupal 6 or Drupal 7, and even going from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, this is definitely one of the easiest that we've ever had to do. And a lot of the modules were available and ready to go from day one. So it's incredibly important, and it provides a lot of new underlying technology and features that will make it easier to sustain and kind of push Drupal forward as we move along for years to come. So again, as Dries has said a couple of times, the big deal about Drupal 9 is it should not be a big deal. Most people should be able to upgrade. There should be no real need to migrate content structures or anything else from going from 8 to 9. And then that should continue into the future through 9 to 10 and other versions. Damien, do you want to talk about semantic versioning?
Yes. So, apologies. So the biggest change, despite all of the new functionality that is in 9 with the layout builder and the migrate system and the media improvements, the biggest foundational change is with semantic versioning. It's a standard process in use throughout the world for most software projects, where you split up the releases into major releases, minor releases, and patch releases. The idea is that a patch release is just a normal bug fix or security fix. And when you update from one to the other, you're only dealing with small minor fixes. With a minor release, that's where there's the opportunity to add new functionality. And then also, while you're adding things, also realize that some of the APIs and things that were in the previous releases need to be deprecated because you've come up with a better way of doing something. And then with a major release, all you do is remove the things that are deprecated and release it as is. And you can see that with the Drupal 8 version history, where with 8.0.0, it was a brand new major release with a huge wealth of changes. But then with the point releases, it was just bug fixes. It came time to the 8.1.0 releases, and then the 8.2 and 8.3 and so on. And each new point release added more functionality. For example, the migrate system was added in, I think, 8.3. And media system was added in another minor release. And as new things were added, APIs were deprecated, and eventually they got to the point of deciding, okay, we're going to release 9.0, and had it planned out to be in June and hit the deadline. We're able to release 9.0.0 in June on schedule. And the big win was that the only difference between 9.0 and the previous Drupal 8 release was that the deprecated APIs had been removed. So in effect, you could have the exact same site running 8.9, make sure your custom code is all up to date with the correct APIs and there aren't any deprecated APIs being used, and you can switch core to 9 and run the exact same site. without any other work. And then as the future goes, then we've had a 9.0.1 bug fix release. There's plans for 9.1.0 feature release in December, and it will continue like that. And it's a major change because instead of having to do this massive rebuild from major release to major release, you're continuing to iterate over what you have on your project. So you start with 8, you do all of the upgrades along, and then when 9 comes out, you just switch over. And then the same deal will happen with Drupal 10.
Cool. So to kind of just wrap up the section on 8 to 9 and what that future model looks like in order to stay prepared for future Drupal updates, it kind of makes things a little bit easier. So as you're developing on kind of newer Drupal versions 9 plus in the future, you'll kind of keep your modules updated, making sure they're compatible to the next major versions. You'll make sure any of your custom code is compatible with that next major version. And then you want to just stay up to date with minor Drupal versions leading up to the next major release. And then going forward, when you get to that next major release, you should just have to upgrade the modules and then move forward.
So that brings us to the point of today's presentation. What to expect when upgrading to Drupal 9. So from Drupal 6, you're going to have to rebuild your theme. You're going to have to work out new ways of handling the output. You're going to have to rebuild views and a number of other things. And then custom functionality will have to be rewritten. Similar story with Drupal 7. Again, the new twig-based theme system, rebuild the output, rebuild the views pages, and look for replacements for custom functionality. With Drupal 8, you keep the same theme. Make sure its code is up to date, but you keep the same theme, you keep the same APIs, presuming you've updated to remove deprecated ones. You can keep the same views pages, same contrib modules, and all of the same custom functionality. So let's look at upgrading from Drupal 6 and 7 to Drupal 9, and with an emphasis on things we know versus things we don't. So things we do know, in advance, we're going to need a new theme. As has been mentioned, we're going to need to rebuild the output, build new views pages, etc. Custom functionality will have to be rebuilt. What we don't know ahead of time is if there are any migration pieces that aren't built yet, or if there might be some migration bugs. So what we found is it's best to build a plan. There are a number of steps that you'll have to go through, and the first and most important is defining done, then build an inventory of the site, work on preparations, work on an initial migration, and then improve the migration process with Drush, do a review, and then refine and repeat until you reach your point of being done. So when we're talking about being done, we're looking at, is all of the content, all of the nodes and terms copied over and have all of the data correct? Have all of the products in the store being copied over correctly? Are all of the user-generated content that the site had, is that processed properly? How about, is there any pieces to the data that you really don't need anymore? Especially when you look at API changes and third-party service providers that have changed over the years, is any of that not necessary anymore? Or do you have to have everything? And that will help lead to working out how much work is needed. And are you concerned about any errors? If you've got millions of records and you hit one error, how much time do you need to spend on that up front versus coming up with a workaround after the fact? So a key thing is to build an inventory of your existing site. Have an understanding of what content types and taxonomy term pages you have, what views pages you have, what panels pages, etc. but have an understanding of what out-of-the-box functionality there is. Then look at the custom functionality you've built on top of that. Any third-party integrations that you custom built, any custom overrides that you need for compliance purposes, all of those things. And also make sure you've got a good inventory of the API keys that you use. So along with that, then also keep in mind how much of that is still needed. Did you build 3 content types that you had intended for this big new sub-site within the system that, say, didn't launch, or only ended having a couple of test pages built, so you don't really need to migrate that content anymore? So then, once you've done that part, then you need to build a Drupal 9 code base to import all of the data into. And we recommend using Composer to do that because it allows a much better way of managing the code base. And I like to build just a simple install profile. So in the profiles directory, create a directory named, say, my site. And then inside that, create an info file with the same name. And then just following the example here, build a list of the modules that it's going to install. So node module, automatic cron, taxonomy, etc., and any of the contrib modules that you know about that you need. So the token module, meta tag, etc. And then list some themes that you're going to have enabled by default. And I also think it's worthwhile building a README file. .txt or Markdown is your preference, but a way of documenting what you're doing and the processes. And then, once you have that done, run an initial site build, a site install, using the installation profile. And then use the migration module, migrate Drupal UI, to do a test run to see what comes up out of the box. You might realize, oh, migrating from Drupal 6, we didn't have a NodeWords module. I need to go find the replacement for that. And then you see the replacement for that is the migrate module. You download that, add it to your install file, and just go through and see what might be missing. And then repeat those processes until you're happy. Then I like to drop into working with Drush. Drush is a command line tool that has been around for quite some time and lets you run a lot of commands more easily than stepping through the UI, especially when you're doing something you want to repeat over and over. So to do that, you remove the migrate UI from the install profile, and you add the migrate upgrade module, which you need to also add to your composer. Then you add a couple of lines to your settings file to indicate what database you're copying from. And then there's a drush command for building the site install from scratch, so it will empty the database and run your install profile that you name here. And then you run the migrate upgrade command, and you specifically tell it the migrate DB key. So the legacy DB key is migrate, which ties back to the value you added in the databases list in the settings file. And then you run the migrate import command, and you tell it the group migrate Drupal 7. And that limits the import to the import setup that was built by the migrate upgrade command. And so you end up with output like this. It says you're about to drop all of the tables in the database, and it shows the installation tasks it does, and then it starts building the migration configuration, and then it will run on migrating the data itself. Taking that a step further, I like to create a simple shell script called upgrade.sh or whatever you want to name it, that runs those commands one after the other. And then when you want to run your upgrade, all you have to do is run one command. And for an example, I use the ddev system locally. So when I'm running a site install, or when I'm in my upgrade.sh file, it runs the site install with the profile name. It creates an admin account, and I tell it what database to use. Then I tell it to do the migrate upgrade. I tell it the host name that it can find the images from and the other files. I tell it which database to use, and then I run the import off of the configuration that was created. So one useful thing about that is as you run it, you might see that, say, the import fails after 30 items are done because this one file or one field doesn't have a module available to import the data from. So, or maybe there's an error with a blank node title. You'd be surprised that one actually comes up on a lot of sites. So you might see, so what I do is I'll leave a note in the upgrade.sh file that something causes this to fail, and then I run it a second time. So then if I run the upgrade.sh file, it runs all through until it hits the first error, and then it continues again. And you can repeat that as often as you need until it gets to the end. So once you have...
Sorry to interject.
Yes.
Folks, if you do have questions, you can put them in the chat. We might not get to them right away, but we certainly will try to get to them throughout this webinar. I know Damien has laid out a very thoughtful, prescriptive, approach to this. So if there are specific questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you. So once you get through all of this, then it's time to review the site, review the content that has been imported, review all of the user data, make sure that's all there and correct, make sure the products are correct and all of the orders have all of the line items and all of the shipping details and everything. And really look at this point to see, is there anything missing? Maybe there were some fields that got missed somehow. And at that point then you start refining the script. You might, like I mentioned, it is surprising how many sites have a node title, have content with a blank node title, even though that isn't strictly possible through the Drupal system. People have hacked their way around that. And so you go back to the source and fix things at the source so the next time you run the upgrade, it doesn't have those problems. And is there any data cleanup? Like I mentioned, are there all of these content types that you realize, there's no content here. We don't need this content type anymore. And you can just delete them. Are there module fixes you need to download? Maybe there are contrib modules that didn't upgrade some of the data. For example, it upgraded, say, one field, but didn't support another. Maybe there are patches available, or maybe you need to take some time and write some patches to help that process along. And maybe there are some module replacements. Like I said, in Drupal 6, the standard SEO module was the NodeWords module. In Drupal 7, that was renamed. So it might not be obvious what to look for. So there might be some replacements there. And this goes back to then, once you go through all of that and repeat those steps, and you'll eventually get the idea is that you'll get the update script down to the point of only having to run the install, the migrate import command once, because all of the errors have been fixed and all of the data is migrated over. Then you decide, okay, am I done yet? Have all of the requirements been met? Is all of the data moved over? Is everything over in enough to be compliant with whatever regulations are overlooking this project? And is there any further work needed to be done? did you discover that certain data needs to be changed? What else needs to be done? So at that point, then you have your migration ready, but you can take it further. You can look at adding automated testing. A really great system is the BHAT system that lets you step through the interface through a set of simple scripts to check to make sure functionality works the way it is expected. So you can write your BHAT tests for Drupal 7 and then have them ready for Drupal 8 to make sure that the functionality still works there. Maybe you want to automate the process. Maybe you could extend that script with, or set it up on, say, a Jenkins or Circle CI infrastructure or something, so that, say, once a day, you have it automatically run the upgrade to see, with the latest and greatest content from production, to see how everything works out. And then at some point you might decide, you know, we really need to delve deeper into this. We want to, say, combine multiple content types into one. We don't need an article and a blog content type. We can just smush those together. Or maybe you decide you want to go in the other direction, that one content type really needs to be split into two different things. There's a wealth of possibilities at that point with Drupal core's migrate system. And obviously then you're going to have to finish the configuration. There's going to be additional configuration you need to do with the Drupal 8 site, build a new search system with Search API, or lots of other details. And obviously you're going to have to build a new theme and customize the output to fit your specific requirements. And at that point then, you are ready to get final sign-off and launch the new site on Drupal 9. So there is thankfully a huge amount of information available for related to Drupal 9. On drupal.org/9, there's a nice landing page there with plenty of information and further links. Gabor Hodsky has built a really good presentation on the state of Drupal 9, where things are and where it's leading to in the future. And once, like I mentioned, once you get to a point, if you decide you need to get in under the hood and start customizing the migration, there's a wealth of documentation and support available for that on Drupal.org as well. So back to Matt.
All right.
Actually, before we get into this, we had a few specific questions, and maybe we can take those on before getting into the next section. So let's see, where should we start?
Can we start with Arpit's question, which is how to find which contrib modules might be impacted by upgrade from 8.7 to 8.8 or 8.9?
Damien, you're on mute.
I was on mute. Thank you. So with minor release updates, the best thing to do is check the release notes for Drupal core itself. Excuse me. There was a note with 8.8 to make sure that you upgrade the path auto module to the latest version there to avoid some problems. Those problems were worked out over time, but it is still worth making sure that you keep everything up to date, kind of together. And the release notes are the best starting point.
Thanks for that, Damien. Another question that we had was, and this might be for Matt, when upgrading to D9, do you have to bother with a content migration, or can you just update the code through Composer?
Yeah, so going from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, there's no need to bother with any kind of content migration using Migrate. You can just straight update your core and modules through Composer. And then you just might have to, if you have any other kind of custom development that you've done on top of Drupal through other modules, you'll have to upgrade that too. But yeah, so that should just work.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Damien, this one's probably for you, which is about security. Are there any specific security considerations to take into account when performing the upgrade?
So let me see. One of the biggest issues that has kind of always sat around is situations where people have written custom PHP code through the UI, and that can often be a problem on older sites. That was handled with the PHP module built into Drupal core. That module was removed from core in Drupal 8, so it was no longer possible to write PHP code, say, into a view or into a block or a node. And that kind of goes back to having a good inventory of what's on the site. It is strongly recommended to not do that. It does open the doors for security problems, if nothing else, because it can make it a lot harder to find the code that your site needs to run. And you also then can't, say, run automated tests against the code itself to make sure that that code is written correctly using the proper APIs, etc. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Damien. There's another question in the chat. Is we are doing some 7 to 8 migrations. Is it possible to leapfrog to 9? I mean, I can take a first pass at that. One of the things that Bree said when he upgraded his blog from 8 to 9, given it wasn't a very complex site, it took a few minutes. So I think that's one of the main takeaways here, is that once you are on 8, the transition to 9 should be very simple. We're not talking about another migration. We're talking about a few minutes or maybe an hour or two to make that transition to 9. So Matt or Damien, is there anything you want to add there? But I think it's maybe just one more small step.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're already going 7 to 8, even if you're going 7 to 8.9, then making that 8.9 to 9 transition would be even easier. So as long as you're kind of getting to that point in 8, then just kind of taking that next step to 9 would be pretty easy.
With one thing that might hold you back to stick with 8 is the contrib modules that your site depends upon or that you decide to use. There has been a huge effort in the community to get contrib modules and themes ready for Drupal 9, but some are not quite ready yet. And so you might discover, oh, there are patches available, but I can't apply them because Composer. So there's no harm in sticking with 8.9 for now and waiting for those modules to be available, or stepping up and helping to co-maintain those and push them forward yourself.
And that's something that I think both Acquia and Mediacurrent have really invested in. I don't know the exact stats, but the vast majority of the widely adopted modules have been ported over to 9 and are ready to use. So we can certainly follow up with some of those stats, but D9 there might be some one-off use cases, but the vast majority you should be able to transition right over. There's a few questions in here that I think we will get to later around themes, as well as, actually there's a question here, any guidance or steps for migration to from Adobe CQ5 to Drupal 9? Yes, we'll talk about that here in a second. So Matt, maybe in the interest of time, do you want to take this slide and then I'll hop to the next?
I mean, we could probably just roll into the platform if you want.
Great.
Interesting.
So a lot of what we talked about right now was Drupal specific. And I think if you want to flip to the next one, Matt, that'd be great. Just know we're not going to focus a whole lot of time here, but Acquia has built out a suite of solutions that enhance Drupal and then help organizations take their digital experience to the next level. And so when you're migrating, We're going to talk through a few specific tools that we offer that's Acquia IP that will help you migrate faster and create a better long-term delivery model. And then on the right side, what you're seeing here is, if you are an agency on the line or you're leading digital strategy at your organization, often if you're going from 7 to 9, this is the time that you're going back to your leadership and you're saying, hey, we're going to continue to invest in Drupal. It's a great platform. And the question that you'll likely get back is, where are we going for the next 2 years? And these are things that you might want to consider, which is obviously content as the foundation. But if you're looking to do more personalized campaigns, if you're looking to utilize machine learning to inform that content, if you need something that's maybe a little bit more robust than Media Library, these are all things that Acquia offers to make sure that not just your migration is effective, which we certainly will help you do that in partnership with Mediacurrent, but your long-term experience with Drupal is meeting your business goals. And so in the short term, Matt, if we want to flip to the next slide, there's 3 kind of primary solutions that we offer and that we would work with Mediacurrent for your teams to leverage to accelerate your migration and for you to show, a positive ROI in getting there effectively. So Matt, if you want to talk through Acquia Migrate and Cloud IDEs real quick, and then I'll cover off on Site Studio. And these might just be tools that folks want to take a look at as they think about migrating. And they can always reach out to Mediacurrent or Acquia to get a bit more than just kind of the high level points you'll hear now.
Yeah, sure. So Acquia Migrate has 3 main components to simplify moving to Drupal 9 or even from other platforms. So the first is Analyze, so you extract your content and data, look at it, analyze it, and optimize it before you move it to Drupal 9. The other is also then to replatform. So if you are coming, we'll talk about Adobe and other items, but if you need to move from those platforms, we have a number of pre-built configurations to make that easier. And then Accelerate, which is coming out soon, which is specifically designed to migrate from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9. And a lot of the stuff that Damien showed with running scripts and all those other things, we have a browser-based UI that's going to kind of streamline and make that process a little more visual to make sure you get that content migrated over quickly and easily.
Great, thanks for that, Matt. And then I guess the last solution that you may want to consider is a new piece of IP that Acquia had acquired in September of last year. It was formerly known as Cohesion. It's now known as Site Studio. And for most developers, Site Studio is actually provides a tremendous amount of value because you can do the work once and then you can allow some of the non-technical folks to utilize that work over and over again. So let's say you build a menu or you create a few different layouts. You create the design system, and some of those things need to change, but there's a basic structure that needs to stay in place. It's going to allow you to do that once and then go back to focusing on the higher value development work that you might want to do, whether that's integration work or writing custom code or evaluating new modules, and how it's going to enhance the Drupal experience. And so even in the migration phase, if you're rebuilding the site and putting new content in the site, those are things that can easily be done through Site Studio, through this visual drag and drop interface. And there are benefits to it above and beyond Layout Builder. And often they can kind of work hand in hand depending on your use case. But if that's something that you'd like to evaluate to show the efficiency of the migration and then the efficiency of how you would deliver content on your site or your portfolio of sites, it's something that we've seen wide adoption when thinking about the long-term delivery model. So these are just tools to consider. Folks like Mediacurrent, they're really well informed, and they know how to utilize these tools. Some of them may not be right for you, but this is just all information for your organization or agency to figure out what is the right approach to get to Drupal 9 and run it effectively long term. So I think with that, we have some more time for Q&A. We have about 10 minutes left. There's a few more questions in the chat. Here's one, let me see. There was a question about, can you recommend tools to test D8 and D9 readiness? I think we might have covered that, but Matt and Damien, is there anything else you want to add there?
Sure, there's the upgrade status module. For Drupal 7, it looks to see if there are Drupal 8 versions of the module available, and that can save a little bit of time instead of the manual hunt and peck. There's a Drupal 8 version of that available, led by Gabor Hortsky and a number of others with contributions from all over the PHP world, that can check your Drupal 8 site to see if it is using any outdated or deprecated APIs, especially useful for checking your custom code and your custom theme. And so that's, again, the upgrade status module.
Great. Anything else, Matt, that you want to highlight?
No, that's the big stuff. Yeah. Great.
There's another question here in the chat. For an upgrade to D8 to 9, do you recommend waiting for a period of time, or is it preferable to upgrade quickly? I think, my hunch, what Damien and Matt would say, is it depends. Most likely it's moved to 9, but you have to look at your specific scenario. And he talked about the modules and any custom code and things of that nature. But that's also why, we did bring, obviously Damien has some great expertise here, but bring Mediacurrent, because often we recommend talking to a partner like Mediacurrent to understand your situation, understand some of the nuances of where you're trying to go, and if it makes sense to go right away, or if it makes sense to stay where you are on 8. So Damien or Matt, or anything that you'd want to add to that?
I think you hit a lot of it. I think it definitely does depend. Especially on anything else that you have in your code base, or kind of how complex things are.
Great.
So generally, in our experience, once you have the contrib modules and dependencies ready, that it works seamlessly at that point. And we've done a few and they've worked out well. So give it a try, honestly. Use upgrade status to check to see when all of your dependencies are ready, and then just try it out and do some regression testing, and I think you'll be surprised at how well it works.
Another question we have here: if a site is still in D9 and performing well, is there any reason to upgrade to D8 before 9? Or should we focus on going straight from 7 to 9?
So again, it goes back to looking at the availability of the contrib pieces that you want to see if they're ready and available for 9 yet. And you can always build it in D8. You're not going to lose anything. You'll just have one more, effectively the equivalent work of a minor upgrade to get to 9 versus the Drupal 8 that you're using. So give it a try.
So the only other thing I might mention there, Damien, I guess this goes back to something that I said earlier, which is the vast majority of modules are available for D9 that are widely used and adopted. So I think that might be the default, is to say, hey, we're going to move to 9. The plan is to get to 9 unless we find something in our research. But theoretically, most of our customers that we've worked with have seen an easy path to go straight to 9. That's the first thing. The second thing is, there is going to be a time period where the innovation is going to focus solely on 9. So there's still I think there's still a little bit of innovation that's on 8, but the focus now is on 9. The community is focused on 9. And so in order for you to be able to, utilize that innovation, you want to be on the latest version. So that's the other benefit of going to 9 as quickly as you can. Anything else you'd want to add, Damien or Matt?
No, that covers it.
Great. There's a question here about themes. And I think there's actually two. I think there was one that was something about a recommended theme. Do you have a recommended theme? And then there's another one that says any specific backend standard theme available. I use Claro, but seems to be experimental.
So for the second point, there is effort to get Claro into core. And it's actually in core, but it has not been made the default admin theme yet. And so work is continuing to polish that off. And the hope is to get it ready and be able to make it stable, or the default admin theme possibly by 9.1.0 in December. But that's the direction that core is moving, to replace the existing 7 admin theme with Claro. For a general base theme to use for front end, or for the visitor side, it really depends upon your specific needs. There are a wide variety of good, stable themes available to use as a base theme, if that is the direction you want to go, where you're given a lot of front-end APIs, so to speak. So it resets CSS, so all of the CSS is going to appear the same on all browsers, and then be able to use different libraries and things. Some have moved towards working with, for example, the Bootstrap library. Some have moved to other libraries. Some are very bare bones and are designed for you to build up to completely customize it yourself. Or maybe you just want something simple that you just tweak some colors on. There are still a number of themes that are more cookie cutter that you can start off with and just tweak a little bit to get a lot of progress. So cannot give direct recommendations, but there are a lot of good ones to try, and recommend trying some and see what works for you.
Great. Thank you, Damien. Another question that I'm seeing here is, looking beyond the initial release of D9, are there any new features that are planned for the future of D9? So what's next for D9 after the launch?
So 9.0.0 was the throughout all of the deprecated APIs, and then 9.1.0 is the first release moving forward that will start adding more features again. Like I mentioned, there's effort to finish the Claro theme. There's work on a new front-end theme called Oliveira, and that is ongoing. I don't know when it'll be finished, but there's a major effort to get that finished. There's also work to improve the library, the media library system. But in general, Dries provided at least his preference for the roadmap in his Dries note at DrupalCon, and has shared a summary of that and an extract of the video on his website that you can take a look at and get an idea for the direction he would like to take.
Great. The next question is probably for Matt and I. What work is typically being done in-house and what work is being done by agency partners? I guess it is in Acquia's experience. So I think what we're seeing is there is a subset of customers who do this on their own, but I would say the vast majority of our customers, they're devs and they're IT leaders. They're managing multiple technologies and multiple stacks, and with the migration, especially from 7 to 9, there is a need for expertise, and there is a need to rely on someone in some capacity that has done this multiple times over the course of different versions of Drupal. And so that's why partners like Mediacurrent are really valuable, because they're super flexible in terms of how they can engage with our customers, the folks who are using Drupal cloud technology to run their Drupal sites. So that would be my recommendation, is do an assessment. But it never hurts to have a call with a partner like Mediacurrent, or a partner that who has great Drupal domain expertise and can help you not just with the migration, but the long-term vision of where you're trying to go. especially if you're on 7. So it's a mix. It's always a mix, but the vast majority are who are on 7 are looking to partners and folks who've done this multiple times just to kind of validate their approach and get additional insight that they might not have. So it looks like, Stephanie, we are almost at time here. I want to be mindful of that and respectful of everyone's time. Did you have any closing remarks or thoughts before we depart?
Yes. So obviously, thank you to Jesse, Damien, Matt, and Ryan yourself for participating. And thank you all for our attendees. The active participation was awesome. So we really appreciate that. As we said previously, the slides and the recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com and will also be sent to you via email within the next few days. So please feel free to share with coworkers, colleagues, others in the Drupal community. We're happy to spread the knowledge here. And if you have any additional questions, please send them to marketing@theacquiateam.com.